welcome back to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into a genuinely mind-bending question. Can you actually transform your physical form within the hidden depths of your subconscious mind? We're talking about shapeshifting, but not as some fantasy concept. We are looking at this as a heavily researched scientific phenomenon.
So let's just jump right into the deep end here. What if turning into a wolf wasn't just ancient mythology or a Hollywood movie trope, but a scientifically measurable state of human consciousness? What if you could literally feel the fur, the fangs, and the primal instincts of a wild animal, all while your actual physical body is sound asleep in bed?
To really get this, we gotta look back a bit. Long before modern sleep labs and brainwave monitors, the ancient Toltecs and Nahual-speaking Indians practiced a profound lucid dreaming tradition called nahualism. Central to this whole belief system was the nahual, basically an animal spirit or a double connected directly to a person's soul. And this animal wasn't just a metaphor, you know? It determined a person's entire nature, their strengths, and their physical traits.
And the kicker here is how they actually viewed reality. Anthropologists classify these societies as polyphasic cultures. In a polyphasic culture, the dream world isn't just brushed off as some nighttime fantasy or a random misfiring of neurons. Dreams are treated as a completely legitimate dimension of reality. It's a place they actively utilized for survival, for deep healing, and even prophecy. There is this unbroken thread of dream travel spanning centuries. We're talking about the Aztec ruler Moctezuma in the 1500s, who literally foresaw the Spanish conquista in a lucid dream and treated it as inevitable reality. Then skip to the late 20th century, and anthropologist Carlos Castaneda blew Western minds by bringing these shamanic concepts to the mainstream. Which brings us right up to a groundbreaking 2025 scientific study that finally decided to put these ancient claims to the test. All right, Section 1, the Wolf Transformation Experiment, where science meets mysticism. Let's look at exactly how modern researchers went about testing this ancient shamanic ritual. The setup at the REM Space Laboratory in 2025 was incredibly wild. They instructed 98 volunteers to enter a lucid dream, a state where you're asleep but totally aware that you're dreaming. Once they were lucid, they had to follow these specific steps. Drop down, run on all fours, systematically imagine their bodies being covered in fur, actually feel their paws and snout, and basically attempt to fully transform their human dream bodies into a wolf. You'd probably expect almost everyone to fail at something that bizarre, right? But the data is absolutely staggering. An incredible 85% of the participants achieved at least a partial, highly visceral physical transformation into an animal form. They weren't just visualizing it in their heads. Their bodies fundamentally altered within the dream space. And looking at the breakdown of the data, the really crazy part is who was able to pull this off. You didn't even need to be some lucid dreaming master. Sure, highly experienced dreamers participated, but plenty of absolute novices successfully tapped into this primal state, sometimes on their very first try. The experiential data they collected is just so visceral. Listen to this report from one of the subjects. They described wild surges of adrenaline and the intense sensation of massive muscle power. They felt themselves effortlessly sprinting at 40 to 60 kilometers per hour without even losing their breath. They experienced this unreal power and agility that is just far beyond normal human limits. It brilliantly illustrates how deeply the brain buys into the transformation. Because it wasn't just physical movement, their entire sensory network totally rewired. Participants developed tunnel vision, their hearing sharpened to pick up the tiny movements of bugs, and for many, they unlocked this profound sense of smell and taste. They were sniffing damp earth, tasting sharp, rich flavors, sensations they had literally never once experienced in their ordinary dreams. And, psychologically, it went even deeper. Researchers documented an actual animalistic mood. Participants reported feelings of wildness, a kind of madness, and an uncontrollable, pure instinctual urge to hunt, fight, and bite. They had fundamentally adopted the consciousness of a wolf. Moving on to Section 2, the limits of plasticity and changing gender. Because to truly test the limits of our subconscious, the researchers ran a second, highly contrasting experiment. Instead of changing into an entirely different species, they asked 99 people to simply change their dream body's gender to the opposite sex. Now, you would think swapping from male to female or vice versa would be way easier than becoming a quadrupedal canine, right? But the results were a massive contrast to the wolf study. The gender shift ran into a huge, unexpected barrier, which was severe psychological resistance.
So despite a 79% overall success rate in some form, participants struggled immensely with the actual physical transition. Researchers pointed to deep-seated subconscious social conditioning and modern societal prejudice as the main roadblocks here. Many participants dismissed the task as foolish or boring, forcing themselves to do it, and they frequently got stuck halfway through the transformation.
Which brings us to Section 3, Unlocking the Collective Unconscious. Because we really have to ask this question. Why is it easier on a subconscious level for a modern human to mentally morph into a wild, aggressive wolf than to simply switch their human gender? The answer to that mystery might actually lie in the legendary psychologist Carl Jung's theory of the collective unconscious. It's a concept beautifully captured by the philosopher Osho, suggesting that way below our personal memories lies this collective layer, a place where we harbor ancient evolutionary memories, echoes of when we existed as animals and birds in the distant evolutionary past. So this brings up a fascinating concept called the ontogenesis of consciousness. Just like human fetuses replicate stages of biological evolution in the womb, modern science is starting to ask if human consciousness actually preserves the evolutionary traits of our ancient animal ancestors. Are these primal animal states simply lying dormant within us, only accessible when the rigid conscious mind shuts down in altered states like a lucid dream? And that is exactly why this REM space study matters so much. We're not just talking about a trippy parlor trick here. It reveals the immense plasticity potential of our self-identity. If we can completely rewrite our bodily form and our senses, we hold an immense, largely untapped therapeutic potential for self-healing. By adopting these animal archetypes, modern dreamers are doing exactly what ancient shamans did for centuries. The study points out that lucid dreaming is already being utilized in real-world psychology right now to cure deep phobias, stop recurrent nightmares, and even aid physical healing through mind-body parallelism. It allows for this profound transpersonal communication with the deeper self, tackling psychological traumas right at the root. There's actually this incredible piece of Mesoamerican oral tradition that speaks directly to what we're seeing right now. It states that in the era of the sixth sun, which began transitioning back in 2012, warriors of dreams will awaken all over the world. People who remember exactly how to control these altered states and harness the raw power of their subconscious mind. So, with the explosion of lucid dreaming practices now being verified and fully backed by modern scientific data, we are left staring at the true, vast reality of our own subconscious potential. The ancient Toltecs fundamentally believed that your future reality is first created in your dreams. Armed with this knowledge, what are you creating?